Number 1.
Poyntz was last seen in the New York City borough of Manhattan sometime during June 1937, possibly June 4 or 5. She left her room in the American Women's Association clubhouse in the 300 block of West 57th Street and vanished. She was not reported missing until December of that year. Poyntz left behind all her personal belongings, including her clothing, luggage, passport, unfinished manuscripts, and a savings account containing $10,500, which has not been touched since her disappearance. Authorities judged from the appearance of her room that she planned to return within a short time. Poyntz is a former history professor at Barnard College and was one of the founding members of the American Communist Party, which came into existence between 1919 and 1921. She was listed in the New York Police Department files as one of the top 10 principal communist leaders in the United States. She ran for public office several times as communist candidate but was never elected. Poyntz dropped out of the Communist Party in 1934 to work for the OGPU, the Russian secret police and predecessor to the KGB. She was assigned to gather information about chemistry and physics from the United States. She traveled to Moscow, Russia in 1936 for additional instructions but became disillusioned with Joseph Stalin's regime and was unwilling to spy for the OGPU anymore. She told friends she planned to write her memoirs and expose the Communist Party. It is believed that Poyntz was murdered by the OGPU to silence her. Several people confessed to killing her after her disappearance, but no one was ever charged. She was declared legally dead in October 1944, and her estate was given to her sister, her sole surviving relative.
Number 2.
Pyke was last seen at approximately 3 p.m. on April 2, 1999, in the vicinity of the 2000 block of State Route 11 in the Evans Mills, New York area. He stopped at a cousin's home but didn't get out of the car. He had driven from towards his home in the 4900 block of Aitchison Road to visit a relative in Watertown, New York. His family reported him missing 2 days later when he did not return. Pyke had previously left on short trips and come back on his own, which is why his loved ones did not report his disappearance immediately. Pyke's vehicle, a dark blue 1989 Chevrolet Blazer with a black top, chrome diamond running boards, and New York license plates numbered FMS 867, is also missing. Photographs of the car are posted with this case summary. It had a full tank of gasoline when Pyke drove away with it on the day of his disappearance. Pyke had been married for 49 years prior to his disappearance. His wife died in 2012, nearly 13 years later, and one of their sons is also deceased. Pyke did not have any money with him when he went missing, and the only item inside the Blazer was his driver's license. Prior to his disappearance, he had spoken of wanting to travel to Florida, but there is no evidence that he went there and no evidence that he crossed the Canadian border either. His case remains unsolved.
Number 3.
Rahman was last seen in New York City on December 8, 2015. She lived on East 198th Street in the Kingsbridge Heights area of the Bronx. She worked as a nurse at Bellevue Hospital at the time of her disappearance. The day of her disappearance, she went to work, then went to call at Hunter College, then arrived home. She has never been heard from again. Rahman was supposed to show up for work on December 10, but never did. The hospital authorities contacted her husband, Mohammed Chowdhury, who said Rahman had gone back to her native Bangladesh the previous day because her parents had been seriously injured in an accident. A photo of Chowdhury is posted with this case summary. When Rahman had still not returned to work by December 14, the hospital police went to her apartment and spoke to Chowdhury. He changed his story slightly, saying Rahman's had left for Bangladesh that morning to see her parents, who had been critically injured and were not expected to live. He said she would come back to work in March. Later that day, Chowdhury flew to Bangladesh with the couple's 9-year-old daughter. They had been Rahman's only relatives in the United States, the rest of her family lived in Bangladesh. The police began investigating Rahman's disappearance on March 4, nearly 4 months after she was last seen, after she didn't return to work as Chowdhury had said she would. They contacted Rahman's parents and learned they hadn't been in a car accident and hadn't heard from their daughter since the day before she was last seen. Chowdhury had told them Rahman had left him for another man. There was no documentary evidence that Rahman had left the United States at all. Authorities were suspicious and searched the family's residence. The basement was flooded from a broken pipe and the walls had been freshly painted. Authorities dug up the freshly poured patio but found no evidence there. They did find Rahman's clothes, wallet, credit cards and passport inside the house. They repeatedly tried to contact Chowdhury, but weren't able to reach him until later that month when he called them from Bangladesh. He told them his marriage had been troubled and said he wanted to return to New York and he thought Rahman's family was going to kill him. Chowdhury is known to have purchased a 16-inch camping axe and packing tape on the morning of December 10, just hours after Rahman was last seen. He has not returned to the United States. The couple's daughter now lives with Chowdhury's mother, and Chowdhury has remarried. Police believe Rahman is dead. They stated she was a person of very regular habits, and it's uncharacteristic of her to leave without warning. Her co-workers described her as a very religious Muslim and a private person who sometimes talked about her daughter, but never even mentioned her husband. She had studied chemistry at the University of Dhaka in Bangladesh, then got an associate's degree at LaGuardia Community College before transferring to Hunter College, where she was studying for a bachelor's degree in nursing. Authorities have named Chowdhury the prime suspect in her disappearance and are trying to build a murder case against him.
Number 4.
Rahman was last seen between 9:30 and 10 p.m. on January 18, 2002 in Ithaca, New York. He was at the Pyramid Mall on North Trifamar Road off of Route 13 near Lansing, New York at the time. He had been laid off from his place of employment inside the shopping center earlier in January 2002. He was attempting to obtain a new position at the mall when he went missing. Authorities believe that Rahman was walking to his residence on Winthrop Drive in Ithaca prior to his disappearance. He never arrived at his home and has not been heard from again. Rahman was missed a day after his disappearance by his brother who lived with him, who called their mother to say he had not returned home. His mother then reported him missing to law enforcement authorities. An extensive search of the region produced no clues as to Rahman's whereabouts. He may have been seen in a wooded area near his residence the day after his disappearance. The sighting has not been confirmed. Rahman is considered to be a very dependable person with strong family connections who would be unlikely to disappear voluntarily. His credit cards and bank accounts have not been used since his disappearance. His family members said it is uncharacteristic of him to leave without warning. Authorities stated there was little evidence available to indicate what happened to Rahman. His case remains unsolved.
Number 5.
Ramirez disappeared from in Yonkers, New York on September 19, 1993. He played a soccer game at War Memorial Field, then left to pick up his 2-year-old daughter from his estranged wife's home in Elmsford, New York. A friend saw him en route, driving on the Sawmill River Parkway near Lawrence Street in Greenburgh, New York. He never arrived and has never been heard from again. On September 28, after Ramirez's family hired a private investigator to find him, 2 of his 11 siblings found his 1980 Toyota parked in the long-term lot at JFK Airport. His wife, Ruth Arriaga, suggested he might have returned to Colombia since Ramirez's mother had just gone there herself. However, Ramirez left behind 2 paychecks totaling $519 and he left his passport with his brother. Ramirez had custody of his daughter, in part because Arriaga had previously violated their custody agreement by taking the girl to California without permission. The couple had separated in 1992 and were in the process of a divorce, and Arriaga was seeing another man and pregnant with his child. Ramirez also had a girlfriend who was also pregnant, although he hadn't told his family about the pregnancy. Arriaga stated Ramirez had expressed doubts about his ability to care for their daughter and was thinking of giving up custody. Ramirez's family, however, said he was a very devoted father, and his lawyer said he would have moved to be near his daughter even if he lost physical custody of her. He believed Arriaga's boyfriend was abusing the girl and had reported him for child abuse after finding bruises on her, but an investigation determined the injuries were accidental. The divorce was finalized a few weeks after Ramirez disappeared. Arriaga and her boyfriend moved to California with Arriaga and Ramirez's daughter, got married and still live there. Ramirez's family is no longer in contact with his daughter. Ramirez is considered missing under suspicious circumstances. Foul play is suspected in his case.
Number 6.
Reilly was last seen at 3 a.m. on January 31, 1985 in West Seneca, New York. She was leaving the Pierce Arrow restaurant in the 3000 block of Seneca Street at the time and was accompanied by an off-duty New York State Trooper, Daniel D. Rose. Rose returned to the eatery alone about an hour later and immediately went to the bathroom. Reilly has never been heard from again. Rose missed work the day after Reilly's disappearance. When he gave a statement to police about Reilly's disappearance, he brought his attorney to the police station. He said he had been drinking with friends at the bar that night and spoke to several women, including Reilly. He stated he did go into the parking lot of the Pierce Arrow with a woman for 20 minutes at about 3 a.m., but said his female companion wasn't Reilly, but someone named Kathy. He said he didn't know Reilly's whereabouts. After giving his statement, Rose refused to cooperate further with the investigation. Police interviewed the friends he was with on the night of his disappearance. One of his friends recalled that Rose, contrary to Rose's statement, did leave the Pierce Arrow with Reilly at 3 a.m. The other friend said he and Rose left the Pierce Arrow for the night at 4 a.m. and stayed the night at Rose's apartment. Shortly after they arrived at the residence, Rose left, saying he was going to some girl's house. His friend then went to bed. When he woke up after 10 a.m., Rose was back and said the woman he'd gone to see wasn't at home. Rose was fired from the police force 2 weeks after Reilly's disappearance for unknown reasons. The termination was reportedly unconnected to Reilly's case. He later became the leader of the Bricklayers Union. In 1998, he was charged with driving under the influence and obstructing government administration. He allegedly tried to kick an officer and threatened the officer and his family. Reilly's father, who died in 2016, believed his daughter was murdered after avoiding possible sexual advances on the night of her disappearance. There is no evidence to substantiate this theory, but authorities agree that foul play is likely in her case. Rose is considered a suspect in Reilly's case, but has never been charged in connection with it. Reilly attended Mount Mercy Academy and Buffalo State College and was employed as a restaurant server in 1985. She enjoys writing and art. Her case remains unsolved.
Number 7.
Robinson was last seen in her hometown of Rochester, New York on June 10, 1976. Her life was troubled at the time of her disappearance. Her husband had left her for her sister, although she was still legally married. She had worked as a waitress, but about 2 weeks before she went missing she fell into prostitution. In October 1978, a man named Leonard Lipsky was arrested for aggravated assault in Provo, Utah. In February 1979, while still in custody in Utah as the charge was pending, he told a social worker and a probation officer that he had strangled Robinson in his apartment on Brooks Avenue in Rochester and dumped her body in a gully 3 hours south of town. Her case was reopened, and after it was featured in the local news, Lipsky's former girlfriend went to police and gave them Robinson's purse, identification, sandals and socks, which she had found in Lipsky's apartment in 1976. Police also found a poem Lipsky wrote which said, "By my hand one has died." Lipsky was later convicted of second-degree murder in Robinson's disappearance and sentenced to 15 years to life in prison, although at his February 1980 trial his defense attorney suggested Robinson might have walked out of her life or committed suicide. He was only the second person in New York State history to be convicted of murder without a body. His conviction was overturned for lack of evidence in April 1980, reinstated on appeal in December 1981, and overturned again in July 1984. A photo of Lipsky is posted with this case summary. Foul play is suspected in Robinson's disappearance due to the circumstances involved.